Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Bear Down Ballers here on the field of 68. I'm Ryan Wall, joined as always by Jordan Pollock. And Jordan, Arizona continues to steamroll forward. They moved to 9-5 after beating West Virginia by 19 points in Morgantown. It's Arizona's fifth straight victory. They moved to 3-0 in the Big 12 Conference. So, I mean, after losing three of four, they've really have got things back on the right path. KJ Lewis led the way with 21 points, four assists, three rebounds, two steals, 9 for 13 from the field. How are you doing today? And what are your first thoughts from the other day's victory against West Virginia?
I'm doing great, and I think the game got out of hand a lot more than I thought it would. I know we had kind of differing opinions on the extent of the game from West Virginia's side. I thought Tucker DeVries like not being available, I thought would be a huge deal, and it seemed to be even more of a big deal than both of us thought it was. And it just seemed like at times West Virginia could not score. And that's not to say that Arizona like just made every shot because they still were a little bit under some of their averages, but overall Arizona played really well. Like you said, KJ Lewis, he stepped up, especially since the last episode. You were kind of giving him some of the work on, and well, we both were of just where we thought his game should be, kind of going into his sophomore year, because especially in college athletics, that's where you make the biggest jump is from your freshman to your sophomore year. And we've seen bits and glimpses of it. And I think this game we kind of saw it on full display. And I know not seeing Caleb Love go in the scoring department, I think really spotlighted KJ even a little bit more. But it was good to see him kind of have a coming out game, I think, offensively.
Yeah, we did get on them against Cincinnati last week. He was 3 for 6 from the field in that game. He went up to 13 shot attempts, nine field goals made in this game. He led Arizona with 13 field goal attempts in this game. Love and Bradley each had 10 for tied it for second for Arizona. But yeah, this was the game that we were expecting KJ Lewis to have throughout this entire season so far, throughout the 14 games and the 13 prior. We were looking and hoping that this version of KJ Lewis, the version that we saw spurts of last season, and we've seen him reappear during moments this year, we're hoping for him to put it all together. And this is what I wanted and what I was talking about last week. A guy who is willing to shoot at all three levels, at the mid range, to finish at the rim. He was 1 for 3 from deep, but I was happy that he took a couple of them. And just a guy that's flat out aggressive on both ends of the floor, that's hunting his own shot, that when he is hot, he's not so passive and he's more just trying to finish. And that's when he's at his best. And Jordan, when I was watching KJ Lewis this past Tuesday against West Virginia, there's one player that popped into my mind in the NBA that I think he resembled a lot, and that's Anthony Edwards. Because both of those guys are superb athletes, guys that finish at such a quickness at the rim, and they're so aggressive on defense when they're alert. And yeah, I was really impressed with KJ Lewis, and I think KJ Lewis is the X factor for this team moving forward. If KJ Lewis can perform up to this level and maybe just even at a 15 point mark on a lot more nights and more frequently than he has in the past, I think the ceiling for this team just goes up a ton.
Yeah, I think your athlete comparison I think is super accurate, super high level athletes that can kind of score the ball. I think I would push back a little bit because I love KJ's mid-range game. And I think that's I think the biggest thing that I've noticed, especially lately so far, and even Big 12 play of how consistent and how much he's enjoyed and liked that shot. So it'll be interesting to see him kind of continue and see how he can stack up some games like this.
Yeah, he was so good in this game. He was pretty much one of the lone bright spots on this team for a lot of it. Jaden Bradley also poured in 15 points, 5 assists, 4 rebounds, 6 for 10 from the field. He also did a good job of getting to the rim, but an area that I think he excelled at in this game, he was 2 for 3 from deep. And that's an area where he necessarily hasn't even struggled that much shooting 3 pointers this year. He just doesn't shoot a lot of three
Hmm.
pointers. And I would just when that ball was coming off his hand, it just looked like silk. It was rolling off his hand very smooth. And I just really was surprised at the improvements he's shown with his jump shot. And after seeing that, I want to see him shoot more 3 pointers and more jump shots, period, because I've always thought he does score the ball at such a high level at the rim, but to me, you only can take your offensive game to a certain level when you only score 2 pointers at the basket. You really need when you kind of bring your range back and open up that, and I think it keeps defenses guessing, and it also allows yourself to contribute at a much higher level. What do you think about Bradley against West Virginia?
Yeah, I think I agree. I think and it kind of goes in and out depending on the matchup and who they're playing against. I think and that's kind of where I was giving you some pushback about this team and their ability and their determination to shoot threes. And so I think like everything, it's kind of matchup dependent in a sense. And I think West Virginia, they were hedging super hard on specific players that led to a lot of easy dunks for Vasar on rolls. And even a guy like Vasar, he's a guy that likes to pick and pop. And so in a lot of ball screens with him, it kind of depends on what he does because lately we've seen him rolling a lot more. And I think that's been a huge thing for this offense that's kind of opened up the game for everybody. But he's also a guy that likes to pick and pop. And if you have a center that's picking and popping, usually that means the guard should try to at least get the helping man at least into the key a little bit for turnaround kick out for that open three. So like I
Yeah.
said, it's matchup dependent, but I agree with you. Hey, there's literally nothing wrong with their shots. And I guess maybe that's something I should have prefaced the other day is like I feel like a majority of all of the starters have the ability to knock down threes. And so from that perspective, I guess I definitely agree with you. Like there's not really a main reason they shouldn't shoot threes if if they're open. I don't think they should just shoot threes for the sake of shooting threes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, Arizona 7 for 20 from three in this game, 35%. But yeah, like you said, the starters, 4 out of 5 starters each made at least one 3 pointer in this game. Hasn't happened in a couple games here. So that was good to see that everybody they're moving the rock and they're each trying to contribute more from deep. But you discussed Vasar and an area that a couple areas that I was really impressed with him. He did score 6 points, wasn't one of his highest this season. He did have a couple nasty dunks that he
All of
really
them were
just
dunks.
when he just
All of
tear
his points were dunks. Yeah.
and he just I mean some of them were just vicious. I mean he was just dominating the West Virginia front court there. But he also finished with 3 blocks, 2 steals, and he just continues to me be the big man in the center on this team that affects the game at the highest level. He's the center that constantly is improving his game, constantly is affecting the game in any way he can. And every minute that he's out there, it seems like he's moving better. It seems like out on the floor. So I've just been really impressed with Vasar. I've said this for multiple episodes in a row now. It's a matter of time until he's inserted into the starting lineup because Toby Awaka, his minutes continue to plummet. He only played 13 minutes. He did have 7 rebounds, only 2 points. But a guy in the front court that we've kind of talked about for a couple games now, and he really just, for whatever reason, he just can't find his way offensively, and even just to me anywhere on the court, he just isn't making a big enough impact when he's out there. and that's Trey Townsend. Trey Townsend, I do want to preface this. He's got a lot of slack this year from Arizona fans and everyone involved. He did have 7 of 8 games earlier in the season. He had double-digit points, so he has shown he is capable of scoring the ball at a high level. But the last 4 games, if we're just being honest, he's had 2, 8, 6, and 5 points, and in all those games, he's had 4 rebounds in 3 of them and 5 against West Virginia. So it's not even just the scoring. He's not affecting the game in any other areas really while he's out there. And he kind of seems like, to me, he's just a little bit invisible when he's on the floor. What do you think about Trey Townsend?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because I think in this stretch, I think this is where Arizona's looked the best. And I think some possible reason could be they were really trying to force him into sets and forcing him the ball in specific situations. And I think that led to him getting a lot of higher numbers to where now I think they're kind of just trying to get the bare minimalist that they can within their offense and then trying to get everybody cycled through it.
Yeah,
And so I think he's just kind of being left a little bit on the outskirts because he doesn't fully fit into a specific position. Like he's undersized for say what his position, small forward is likely what I would probably put him at 3'4", and as a 6'6" guy, when you're playing in high power five league, like you're going to be going against bigger guys. So defensively, it's hard for him to match up, and even offensively in this specific offense where he's not getting specific paint touches or getting specific um, tosses across
yeah.
the court at the wing. I think it's difficult right now, and I'm not saying it can change and he can fully integrate himself into the offense and he can figure it out. But I just think it's interesting that it seems like this team's been clicking and his role is being lessened, and those things are like happening at the same time.
Yeah, he was 2 for 5 from the field. This did have 5 shots, 5 points, obviously, but it just seems like he's not even getting that many touches on offense. Like they're not even looking to him. They're not even calling any plays. It seems like when you're watching in the flow of the game. And when you saw him last year, obviously it's at a whole different level. We've talked about this
Hmm.
throughout the year. But when he was at Oakland, they were calling plays, sets for him, dumping it down low. He was using his post moves and finishing over defenders. And that just isn't the case this year. He hasn't been that X factor that I think that he could have been to start the year. I still think that I'll hold out some hope. I still think he can affect the team in a big way. But this might sound crazy, but he played 25 minutes, 5 points, 5 rebounds. But the guy that played 14 minutes off the bench, the freshman Carter Bryant, I think he outplayed him and made one of the biggest impacts per minute when he's on the floor. He's done this for a couple games now, but he had 7 points, 3 rebounds, 1 assist, 1 steal, 3 for 3 from the field, continues to be hot shooting the ball. This guy, to me, every time he's out there, he does something. He's either trying to intercept passing lanes, he's grabbing a rebound, he's finishing at the rim, he's getting fouled. He's always doing something. And I think, like I said, it's a matter of time for Vasar to be in the starting lineup. I think it's only a matter of time that Bryant is back in the starting lineup. And to me, he needs to play 20 minutes plus a night. He's earned that. He deserves that. And he's just frankly, age aside, year aside, he's one of the best players on this Arizona team right now, I believe.
Yeah, I agree. I think there does come a second question though. How does his role change in that? Because if he's almost playing higher than his role right now, and then you maximize that role, so how is that going to change possibly? And I know
Yeah.
and it's an interesting question because we've seen over the last few years, especially during the Tommy Lloyd, how either starting somebody or putting somebody on the bench, how much that just impacts almost the entire team from just from just their aggressiveness. It seems like Pele's first year, pretty much Pele's entire career, it felt like there were times it's like, well, like do we start him? Do we keep him on the bench as like the sixth man and have him help and lead that second unit? And now we're doing the same thing with KJ Lewis to where it's like he looks amazing in the second unit, and it almost gives him more minutes because you give him
Yeah.
big stretches at times of being able to be a primary ball handler. He's not third fiddle to Caleb and Jaden Bradley all the time. And so it with things like that, it just depends. And I think you got to be a little careful when you're flipping lineups like that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm not also I'll kind of take a little bit of that back because my main point is not actually him starting. My main point is, as I said to begin talking about Carter Bryant, is Carter Bryant playing more? Like I said, play more than 20 minutes. So, yeah, he can come off the bench, but three of the guys off the bench, Vasar, Bryant, and Lewis, the past couple games have been three of the best players on this basketball team. It's that simple.
Yeah.
Anthony Del Orso starting, he entered the starting lineup weeks ago. I thought he was really good in this game. He was one of Arizona early in the game. They went through pretty much the first 5, 6 minutes where it just seemed like nobody, West Virginia was playing tight defense. They were really good on D. And Arizona, it just seemed they kept running the shot clock down and nobody really wanted to shoot the ball. And Anthony Del Orso was the guy who took a couple shots early, made a couple, got Arizona offense in motion, and I really think he was fearless in that game, and I think he was really good, and I think he's been a bright spot for this team. When he's a guy who did start slow, we did question what type of impact he can make. I thought he was good in this game. What'd you think of Anthony Del Orso, and is there anything else that particularly stood out to you in this game?
Yeah, I would say I think he's been a guy that I think the entire team has benefited from him kind of stepping into a starting role and just kind of being another shooter presence and kind of a quick spark kind of guy that can just score. He can score anywhere on the court, and he's got a pretty good handle and he can manipulate the ball really well. And so he just gives you another threat out there offensively, which is great. And he's improved a lot defensively as we've talked about throughout this season. One thing I'll say specifically that we've talked about those three guys, KJ Lewis, Henry Vasar, Carter Bryant, we can get as just like basketball fans, and even when we play, we can get into so much of the thought of like, oh, like the best players are the starters. We got to start like who's the starters to where in a game the biggest impact in the game is who's finishing the game, not who's starting the game.
100%.
And I know at least in the Cincinnati game, I don't think Carter Bryant was on the floor, but I know Henry Vasar and KJ Lewis were on the floor to end the game.
Yep.
And so to your point, I think I could easily see very soon to where Carter Bryant is on the court to close out games. And so that shows me who who's your more dependable guys, and who do you trust the most. And right now those three guys are definitely in that top five, if not like right there close. Because I think probably with the guard wise, it's kind of hard because you got Caleb. You no matter what situation, you probably want Caleb on the floor. He's either going to shoot a three if you're down, or he's going to make free throws if you're up. And then the same thing with Jaden Bradley. We saw in that Cincinnati game, he had a great layup, which
Yep.
put them ahead in the last minute. But yeah, I think those guys are definitely they're definitely going to see themselves in position to finish games,
Yeah.
which that's where the biggest players are want to be. You know, they want to be on the court to end the game, either to come back or to close it out and to win.
Yeah.
Um, and another thing I'll say, specifically just about the West Virginia game, this 5 game win streak is I just want to give a little bit of praise to Tommy Lloyd for just sitting in the tension of being at 500 and being at 0 and 5 to quad one teams, and everybody thinking the sky's falling when he's very meticulous and he's the one that engineered having these major games at the start of the year. And whether he's the one organizing of like, okay, like we need to change a lot or we need to change a little. And he's done I think just a seamless job of just riding out that hard wave that we saw in those first 2 months of the season. And now they're tied for first in the Big 12 at 3-0 with Iowa State and Houston, who have been at the top of this conference since they started expanding last season. So I think Tommy Lloyd's done a great job, and I'm excited to see them get a little bit deeper into the Big 12, into some of these higher competitive teams that they're going to be playing soon.
Yeah, I 100% agree with your first point about, to me, the closing lineup, excuse me. I think the best version is KJ Lewis, Caleb Love, Jaden Bradley, Vasar, and Carter Bryant. Right now, that's how I would have it. But yeah, your second point there about Tommy Lloyd, 100%. These last 5 games proves to everybody why Tommy Lloyd is the guy, why
Mhm.
he had all the hype on him when he was at Gonzaga for over 2 decades and he came to Arizona. And he's not just on a 5 game winning streak, he's on a 5 game winning streak when he's entering a new conference, and now they're 3-0 in that new conference, and they've won 2 games on the road. And they didn't just win 2 games on the road, they've won the 2 games on the opposite coast of the country from where Arizona
Yep.
is at in Tucson. So they've overcame a lot of obstacles. This coaching staff, the culture that he's built already is just infectious for the players and everyone involved. And they return home looking great, as you mentioned, 3-0, coming off of a 19-point victory over then ranked 21 West Virginia Mountaineers. Arizona should be and should find themselves in the top 25 in the AP rankings coming here in the next, I would say, week or two. I would
I
expect
agree.
Arizona around that 24-25 spot at the very least, because they're coming off of 2 wins over top 25 teams. But Jordan, moving on and moving forward, Arizona returns home. Like I said, they play UCF at home. Arizona's minus 16 and a half in this game on DraftKings Sportsbook. The total is 156. That's the total points. Arizona's minus 1100 on the money line. UCF's plus 700. The game tips off Saturday night at 8 p.m. local time, 10 p.m. on the East Coast. It's on ESPN. The next 2 games are on ESPN. They play Baylor this coming Tuesday. We'll get into that early next week before that game tips off. But staying with UCF, how do you see this game playing out? Do you think Arizona wins their fourth straight game to open up Big 12 play?
I think they will. And kind of as I was telling you before, I watched UCF without even realizing that I watched UCF. They played, I think it was like the Greensboro tournament, like holiday tournament. I think it was like the week after Thanksgiving. They played Wisconsin in, I think, the semifinals of that tournament. And it really wasn't a game that Wisconsin, they got out to an early lead, and I don't think they ever got within 10 of them the entire game. They made 2 3-pointers in that game, shot less than 10. And when you're down plus 10 to a team and you're just not shooting threes, it, they weren't memorable. That's what I would say. They weren't memorable. And so I think thinking about that, and a lot of people will look at kind of what they did the other day against Kansas and seeing how bad they got blown out in that game. I think you would be like, okay, like the 16 and a half point differential makes sense. But then you look at the game before Kansas, and they go to Lubbock and they beat Texas Tech. And then the first few weeks of the season, they beat a pretty dang good Texas A&M team. So I don't really know where this UCF team is. It seems like it's kind of dependent on maybe the state they're playing in. If they're in Texas, they're going to play really well, and if not, they're not. I don't really know. I don't really think the spread will be covered though. I think 16's a lot, especially in conference, early conference, which I'm sure a majority of that was bolstered after them losing by over 30 to Kansas the other day. Um,
More than
I
that, they lost
was that
by
40.
they know they lost by
Oh
51
my,
points. to
That's
Kansas
just unheard of.
on January 5th. That was unbelievable. Like you said, they have been riding the highs, lowest the lows. They've came up and down, so you never know. They lose by 50 one night, then they beat Colorado by a point the other
Yeah.
night. So it's really kind of, I agree, it's tough to read this UCF team. They're led by Keyshawn Hall and Jordan Ivy Curry, both averaging over 15 points a game. This team is guard heavy. They shoot the ball 34% from three, not too well. They're averaging a little over 78 points per game. They only have three guys averaging double figures here. And this to me is, although they did beat Kansas, they beat Kansas at home. This is going to
Hmm.
be, to me, their toughest environment. They did beat Texas Tech, as you mentioned, but that was later in the year. Most kids were off campus at that time. So they're going to come back to a full force Arizona Wildcat fan base at the
Yep.
McCall Center Saturday night on ESPN. I think Arizona, I agree. I don't think they cover the spread, but I think Arizona wins this game by 14, 15 points. They continue their winning streak, more move to 4-0 in the Big 12 to me, and get ready for a game that I've been looking forward to all season long. Although they're not ranked right now in the top 25, they were earlier in the year, just like Arizona. That's the Baylor Bears. Scott Drew and company come to town Tuesday night. But before we go, what's your prediction as I'm with Arizona winning against UCF?
Yeah, I agree. I think they're going to win. I think they'll get in the double figures. I'll probably say about 12 points. 12 points. I think that's what I'll say. And like you said, I know classes start, I think, Monday or Tuesday for Arizona students. So I'm hoping enough come into town early enough to catch the game Saturday night.
Yeah, well, hopefully the Wildcat fans will be there at the McCall Center in full force to begin 2025 in Arizona. Hopefully can start the year 1-0 at home. But that's all we're going to have time for today. I'm Ryan Walk. He's Jordan Pollock. Thanks everybody for watching, viewing, liking, and subscribing. We'll be back right here early next week before Arizona's big game against Baylor.